Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of 80s Trash Horror. Trying something a little bit different today. I'm uploading a quick video instead of shooting a live video. Again, just trying to trying to keep the channel active and offering you things. So today's two movies, an 80s Trash Horror. Again, as happens a lot, they're not really trash. I just like the title, 80s Trash Horror. But sometimes the movies are trash. Sometimes they're wonderful trash. Sometimes they're just trash. But sometimes the movies are this perfect example of what I've come to think of 80s horror films. And I do have to admit, again, in some ways, I've watched more modern horror films than I've watched 80s horror films, just because in that time period growing up, which is kind of sad because that was the VHS like golden age, right? I was not a horror fan at the time. I was really more of a sci-fi fan, so I didn't really watch a lot of these movies. So I'm watching a lot of these movies in retrospect. But I have two movies that we're going to look at today. One called Children of the Night, and the other one Zero Boys. Now, Children of the Night, starring Peter DeLuise and Karen Black, it's a fun, campy vampire film. Does some different things with vampires. I like how the vampires slept in this movie. Spoiler alert. If they couldn't find a coffin to sleep in, they slept underwater and actually like regurgitated their lungs to kind of breathe like a fish, I guess. Or they covered themselves in an amniotic sac and regurgitated their lungs on top of the sac so they could breathe while they're protected from the sunlight by this like water-like sac. So that was kind of interesting. And what I'm finding with a lot of these 80s horror films is the acting that great? Not really. But it's the acting is not that great, but there's an earnestness there. Like there's a charm there. I mean, I'm starting to come to differentiate between when the acting is just gutter trash terrible, or like I don't even think these people have even taken an acting class before, and then when maybe the acting's not that great, but these people at least are like there's an earnestness there. Maybe they're not very good actors, but they've at least spent time acting or whatever. And there's a big difference in it. So, Children of the Night, yeah, definitely a fun, campy vampire film on Tubi. The second one is The Zero Boys, starring as the bad guy of all people, Joe Estevez, who's apparently Martin Sheen's brother and uncle of Emilio Estevez. And This one was again a really great movie too. Initially, I thought I was signed on for like a Delta Force thriller kind of action movie, but then it definitely ventured into horror territory. The Zero Boys are a group of paintballers who used to get their butts kicked all the time, hence the name the Zero Boys, until they started practicing and got really, really good, and they become perennial paintball champions. I don't think you can get any more 80s than paintball. Um, and they decided to celebrate after winning this most recent competition by going out camping with, of course, all their own personal machine guns that they just happen to have. With the most 80s of all machine guns, the semi automatic Uzi, several semi automatic Uzis. They end up finding a deserted, like, resort house in the middle of the woods. I think it's great. Of course, that's like a Venus flytrap, right? As it turns out, there's these two guys that, for whatever reason, like to hunt people, and they set a trap for them. They've been doing this for quite some time. Yeah, it definitely ventures into horror territory here, and it's a really enjoyable film. Now, I will say this, and I want to be careful when I say this because I know this can be it can be a divisive topic. Um, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself all that progressive, only because I know there's a lot of blind spots of my own that I still need to address, and I'm still learning. I'm at least trying to learn to be more, considerate and things like that. But one thing that's really kind of surprised me a lot in watching these 80s horror films is some of them have such a almost casual misogyny, if that makes sense. Like in Zero Boys, the main protagonist, he's portrayed to us as a good guy. He's not portrayed to us as a bad guy, and the main female protagonist certainly likes him. But these male protagonists, a lot of times they end up hectoring and getting on the female protagonist's case, like get it together, pull yourself together, and then the female protagonists are like falling or I can't go on, and it's just kind of like you watch that, and you're like, it was really part of the culture back then, wasn't it? Anyway, both of these movies are really enjoyable. They're a lot of fun, and they're on Tubi, so I would go check those out this weekend.